Welcome to Trailblazers and Titans with your host, Dr. Keith Haney. Trailblazers and Titans is your go-to podcast for insights, inspiration, and actionable advice from the world's most successful entrepreneurs and leaders. Each episode features in-depth interviews with industry pioneers, innovative thinkers, and business moguls who share their journeys, challenges, and strategies for success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned leader, or someone looking to make a significant impact, this podcast provides the tools and motivation to blaze your trail and become a titan in your field. Tune in to learn, grow, and transform your vision into reality.
My guest today, author of Dare to Author, has written seven previous books, including Next is Now, Excellence Every Day, Innovating IT, Customer Experience Strategies, Exceptionalize It, and Passionate and Profitable. He is an investor, strategic accelerator, speaker, and award-winning consultant. The founder of Stravidia Group, he has helped brands such as Mercedes-Benz, Delta Airlines, Walmart, FedEx, Johnson & Johnson, Honeywell, and MasterCard to author the next chapter in their success. His articles have appeared in such publications as the Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, Chief Executive, Arusi, who was named in 2023 as a top global guru, received his undergrad degree from Case Western Reserve University and his MBA from University of Weatherhead School of Management. He lives in New Jersey with his wife and children. We welcome him to the podcast. Well, my friend, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I am great. I'm so glad to talk to you about this important topic. I love your audience, your topic here, and the name of your book. So we should have a lot of fun talking about this. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Let's dive in.
So I love to ask my guests this question to kind of get a chance to think about the best piece of advice you've ever received.
The best piece of advice I ever received was stop thinking about your product and start thinking like your customer. The moment you start thinking like your customer, it changes everything.
Oh, I love that. And it makes so much sense, because if you're thinking about your product and not how the customer, how that product benefits the customer, you lose sight of how to even talk to the customer about the product.
It's actually going deeper than that, because as entrepreneurs, as young business people, we're in love with our product. We think it's the solution for everything in the world. And many of the customers are actually kind of afraid of that. They don't want to change, or they draw a completely different benefit from it than you thought it was. So thinking and putting yourself in the shoes of the customers is requiring you to be humble about what are the real benefits, and really understanding what are they struggling with.
Right, exactly. I'm curious, a person like yourself who's had a lot of influence in a lot of different companies, were there people along your journey who came alongside you as you were developing, growing, and maturing as a leader to help kind of be a guide for you or a mentor?
So I cannot say that a specific person was my mentor at any given time. And I think this is something I regret. I have to tell you, in retrospect, I should have had a mentor. I'm serving that today with some people, and I can see the big difference. But there were definitely people that illuminated, at the moment of time and gave me kind of a wake-up call. I'm going to give you one example that So I was in startups, and I love startups, and you're the king of everything. You're the chief executive of everything. And one day I got a call from HP, and I went to an interview, and the place was like, it was like huge company, cubicles, and I came back and I told one of the board members in my startup, I'm like, I don't think I can do that. It's just too big. He said to me, look, Lior, you need to go and see how the big guys are operating. It's going to change your mind. It's going to change the way you think about problems and the way you present your companies to the world. And you know what? He was right. He was right. I was afraid. So that's an example of somebody that I would say it was an insightful moment that kind of changed my perspective. And then after I left HP and I started my own company, Strativity, I remember like the first few days I freaked out, like, oh my gosh, I'm losing the corporate salary and what's going to happen now. And a friend of mine pulled me aside and said, Lior, have you been successful until now? I said, by and large, yes. I mean, I made my mistakes, but I've been successful. He said, so why do you think you're going to start being a failure right now? That was another one. I was like, oh, I guess you're right. So I would say I was blessed with people at certain points who either believed in me in a way that I didn't believe in myself, or have given me a perspective that I did not see, and then it guided my career in a certain way.
As you think about how you are mentoring people today, what are some key things that you've discovered that are important if you want to mentor someone? Because we all may think we're going to be a blessing to somebody, but if we don't have certain principles in our mind about what it means to be a mentor, we can do it the wrong way. So what are some key things that you're trying to do as you try to help someone else?
So one of the first ones that I have a discussion with people who wants to go into their own business, and I said, look, you can make money in corporate, you can make money in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not a financial decision, it's a lifestyle decision. So first and foremost, understand, what are you really looking for? Are you just running away from something you don't like, or are you pursuing something that you want? And the question is, how big do you want that company to be? Do you want to be the chief of everything? Do you want other people to work for you? These are important questions that you need to think about in advance, because if you structure a company where you're the chief delivery person, it will never grow. But if you are going to bring other people, you need to let go. And that's not an easy thing. People don't think about it, okay? So that's the first thing. I have a conversation with them around what are you really trying to achieve, and do you understand this is a lifestyle decision as opposed to anything else? Now, as companies grow, I have usually an interesting conversation with CEOs, and I said, look, guys, I built a business. I was the CEO of my business, and I have to tell you, I never knew if I'm funny or not, because I never know if people laughing because I'm funny or because I'm the CEO. And I said, and whenever I said it to my employees, they will say, no, you are funny. I said, you see, that's exactly why I don't believe you. And my point to them is, it's lonely at the top, and get yourself some people that can put a mirror in front of you and tell you the truth. And second, there are things that, when you're at the top, there are things that your employees are never going to tell you. You're holding a certain position that carries authority, that carries responsibility, that people are counting on, and you need to be humble, but also understand how powerful that position is and how influential that position is. And I think a lot of people, when you started and you were on your own, and all of a sudden your business have 30, 40, 50 people, you think you're still that entrepreneur with nobody there. But no, man, you have 40 payrolls on your back. You have 40 families living off what you're doing. And guess what? It's a huge responsibility.
Right. I've talked to other entrepreneurs and CEOs before, and the question I always ask them, because I saw this in a study somewhere, that as you become, at that level of CEO, you lose the ability to have emotional intelligence and connection with your people. How do you, as a CEO, make sure that you maintain some level of connectivity with your people so that you can better lead them?
So that is actually a very, very interesting question, because I've done workshop with CEOs and executives around this topic, and I asked them, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? Mm-hmm. Okay. And ultimately, we reach a very simple conclusion. A manager draws upon their formal power, I'm the boss, and a leader is drawing upon their informal power. Now, the question is, how do you create informal power? Many of them think that their job is to be the friends of their employees. Your employees will never be your friend, because you're carrying the responsibility for their salaries, for their job, and everything else. The question is, how do you command respect? There's a difference between being their friend and being respected. So my employees always knew that I will, and this is what I was known for, I will stretch them beyond their comfort zone. I never wanted them to perform within their comfort zone. I always look for, what's the next aspiration? How can I put you in a different position? I want you to perform outside of your comfort zone, because A, you're going to strive to do better. B, you're going to be careful not to fail. and C, you know that I'm there to be your safety net if something will happen. This is the way I manage my people. And I said, the joke was in the company, when you join my company, you join a Ferrari doing a 90 miles an hour, and we're going fast. So if you don't enjoy the fast, and by the way, then the employees adopted this joke to say, yeah, blindfold too. So, so I was, my way of commending the respect for my people is by stretching them with opportunities and tasks and challenges that they've never done before. So they can look back every year and says, I've grown this year, I've achieved this year. But they knew that I'll be their safety net. If something will happen, I'll be there to catch them. So that was my way of doing that, and I believe that people who are operating within their comfort zone are tending to not excel in their performance, and people who are outside of their comfort zone are striving to grow. These are two different running people.
Yeah, no, I love that. And something you said was interesting to me as you talked about describing how your employees kind of had were going at 100 miles an hour in a Ferrari, but you also talked about how do you saved a safety net for them, so if they wouldn't fail. How do you get people to trust you, to know that it's okay to go 100 miles an hour, but what if I do fail? What because a lot of times people don't take the chance because they're afraid to fail.
I'm going to give you an example. The short answer to it is stories, which is connected to my next book, Dare to Author. So I'm going to share with you a story. One of my consultants went on the road. She was in Austin, Texas. She was working with a medical organization, and she was late for a meeting that she didn't even know she had with one of the executives. That executive decided to burst into screaming and yelling in front of other people about how she's wasting his time, she didn't show up on time, and what kind of a person is she, and so on and so forth. She called me all shook up, and I said to her, are you okay? She said yes. Are you ready to continue, or do you need to come back? She said, no, I think I can continue, and then we'll do the discussion after I finish. 3 days later, she returned. We sat down in the office. We went through everything, and then I called the CEO. And I said, sir, based on what I've understood, your person have crossed the line, and I'm expecting an apology. And he said, well, I don't know about that. Let me see what I can do, He called me back the next day. He said, I have researched the issue and talked to people who've seen the scene, and I've concluded, this is a quote, that he scolded her just the right amount of scolding, and therefore we do not believe that there is a need for an apology.
Wow.
So listen to this. I said to him without hesitation, I said, here's what's going to happen next, sir. I'm going to write you a check for the down payment that you paid for this project. I'm going to FedEx it to you for delivery tomorrow at 10 a.m. Upon your receipt of that envelope, I do not want to hear from you ever again. And the guy said to me, are you sure? Isn't that not too extreme? I said, no. If you are leading an organization and can actually utter to me that screaming and embarrassing people, there is such a thing as the right amount of scolding of embarrassing people, then we don't have a basic foundation, shared foundation of values. Now, that story was traveling for years in the company.
Wow.
That story, I'll give you one more story. We were doing a major project for Delta Airlines. One of my guys was on stage training flight attendants and gate agents and so on and so forth. During the break, he receives the message that his father passed away. Now, arranging that training was not a simple thing. The schedules of flight attendants and so on, so it's not easy. And he calls me and he said, Lior, I don't know what to do. And I said to him, first, tell me about your father. What is the one lesson you learned from him? And we spent 30 minutes talking about his father. And then I asked him a very simple thing. If you'll go on stage right now, what would your father feel? And can you find a way to weave at least one of the special qualities of your father on stage? So at least you'll turn this not into a mandatory thing that you have to do, but maybe part of the commemoration. Because I said to him, I said, Steve, I never met your father, but I know you. And as his son, I know that he was a great person because he brought us you. And he was in tears, and he went and finished this, and flying colors. And again, that was another example, a story that ultimately kind of was shared across the organization. So leadership is about creating stories that demonstrate that at the moment of truth, you lived by your values. I don't believe in putting values on the wall. That's BS.
Right.
Until you don't test them in real life, they're just statement of intentions.
Yes. Just from those two stories, I could probably tell you your employees really do think you're funny. Because you seem so approachable. I think sometimes when you're not approachable, people laugh out of a sense of obligation versus the fact that you truly are funny.
You're right, but I have to tell you that anyone who would approach my wife and say, "Can you talk to Lior about getting a job in his company?" and she would say, "I wouldn't work there. He's a very demanding guy. I wouldn't work there. I wouldn't recommend you to work for him. He's very demanding." And I didn't demand because I wanted to, be a tyrant. I was demanding because I believe that they would grow better that way by giving them opportunities that no one else will give them, which is the ultimate trust you can give your people. But the notion of leading through stories, it's actually leading with proof points for what you're really all about. And I have to tell you, I wrote Dare to Author in order to empower a lot of leaders to feel comfortable with that. And their thinking about storytelling is you need to strip everything, you need to be vulnerable. I said, no. There's no purpose in being vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable. You're sharing the things that are relevant in order to activate people. Don't share stories for the sake of stories. I don't care what you did in high school or on the prom. If it's not relevant, this is not what it's about. But use your stories in a deliberate way to demonstrate the performance you're looking for, the kind of values that you're looking for people to live by. That's what stories. And you see, we don't live in the world of facts and data. Data doesn't change people. Stories change people.
Right.
People will follow stories. They will not follow data. And I'll give you, here's a funny one for you. How do I know that? Because January 1st is coming. On January 1st, millions of Americans are going to go on the scale. They're going to see the number. They're going to hate the number. And yet they won't do anything about it because we don't live in facts. We live in stories.
Right. But if you tell me a story about how it could look next January 1st, it might be more interesting. So what inspired you to write Dare to Author? Because it seems different from your previous books.
This book is very different, and it comes with its own story, which I actually start the book with. So I've been working with a U.S. insurance company for several years, and I was preparing a board meeting presentation about innovation. And 30 days before the presentation, I went on a call with the CEO and a couple of VPs. We already have all the content ready. And the CEO, who knows me, we are good friends, and he went on the call and he said, "Lior, we're not going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about your next book." And I said to him, "Ben, there is no next book. I'm not working on the book." And he's like, No, there is. You just don't know that yet. So you're going to come and talk about the book. I'm like, "Ben, we're 30 days away from the presentation. Everything is ready, all the slides. There is no next book." And he's like, yeah, there is, Lior. You just don't know that, but there is. I'm like, "Ben, I'm going to bring Winnie the Pooh, and I'm going to read it for 90 minutes. And he's like, "If you want to read Winnie the Pooh to me, I'm sure I'm going to learn something new." And lo and behold, young up, I look at the other CEOs in that Zoom session. I'm like, "What the heck just happened here?" And they're like, "We don't know. He didn't tell us anything." So within 30 days, I started basically who is the author of your life story, and the main argument is because my business is transformation and change. One of the things that I realized that we are by default as human beings treating change as a victim. So we're feeling victimized. We're fighting like victims. We're never ever considering the possibility that change and transformation actually can be exciting, and what was the difference? When you're a victim, you feel that things are being done to you. When you are a hero, you are the one leading. So my challenge to people is, if you do not author your own life story, it's going to be authored to you, and I'm not sure that you're going to like it. So it's time to author it in the way that we'll be proud. That was one reason. But the second reason, many people talk about authoring your life story in a form of coming to closure with pain. I'm saying that's not the purpose. For me, authoring a life story is to convert past experiences into future strength and resilience. I honestly believe that God puts us in situations and challenges that we have inside the power to solve. And we do not know that power because we have never authored past experiences to discover the superpower and the toolkit that we do have within us to deal with those challenges.
I love that. What you're describing is a revolutionary look at leadership and innovation. So how do you see authoring your story challenging our conventional way of leading?
I think that we are shifting in so many levels from what used to be the invincible leader that knows it all and into the leader that says, let's discover it together. Because one of the things that I'm trying, here's what happens. A lot of the leaders, if you see CEOs in corporate America, you'll see many of them coming from finance or operations. So they are left brain people. They're not creative people. They're not people. Okay, they're seeing the world through spreadsheets and pie charts and graphs and all these type of things. Second of all, many of them are mirroring their first manager from 30 years ago who told them, if you want to do it right, do it yourself, or something else like that.
Right.
Well, that leader may have been relevant in 95. It's not going to be relevant in 2025. We don't use Windows 95 anymore. Why are we using the operating system of leadership from 30 years ago? That is the issue, that our employees are not looking for the invincible leader, because in their mind, if you're so invincible and you know everything, then what do I need to do? Just do it yourself.
Right.
We're not inviting them into creation. We're not inviting them into the journey. We're just telling them to follow with their eyes closed, and nobody wants to follow such a leader. If you know all the answers, then I'm going to go find somewhere else to put my talent, because my talent is valuable too. But you're not giving me a space to express myself with my talent.
It seems like you have kind of bridged the gap between that leader from 1995 who says, do it all yourself, to I saw an overshift to almost, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to cry with your employees, so you kind of in that middle space of, no, you can be a good leader by telling stories that connect with, that tell the story of the company where you've been in the past. So it's like in between those two extremes of leadership.
I think that as leaders, on one side, we need to demonstrate the confidence in our direction without necessarily prescribing every step of the way.
Right.
People do want to follow someone who knows where he's going. I mean, they're not going to follow you if you don't know where you're going. But at the same time, if you're going to prescribe every step of the way, you're going to lose me. I'm going to become a victim of your method. I'm going to become a passive follower. Don't expect me to bring my caring, my thinking out of the box, my creativity, my sense of ownership. I'm not going to bring it to a situation where my leader already knows all the answers.
Right, exactly.
To demonstrate on one side a clarity and conviction of where you're heading, but with the flexibility to find different ways to get there.
I love that. I also want to ask you, as we talk about this book a little bit more, to kind of walk us through some of the, I do love research myself because I just got done doing a ton of it. What was the research behind your book?
So the book actually includes a wide variety of research that I bring to the table, but one of the central pieces is a benchmark study that we have done with Harvard Business Review several years ago. We benchmarked 422 companies, and we asked them a very simple question. How successful are you with your change program? And 9%, 9 out of 100%, said we have been successful, which is a very bad number. If you substitute the word change with the word future or strategy, you understand that they have no future. They're not future ready.
Right.
So we said, okay, so what are the reasons? What are the reasons for this level of failure, in a sense? And is it budget? Is it technology? Is it governance? The human factor was the number one. Then we started to dive deeper and deeper, and the notion was always that people are fighting the future because they're afraid of the unknown. We found that it's actually something totally different. When people hear the word change, they equate it with a negative judgment on their past behavior. If you want me to change from my Excel to use Oracle, then guess what? That means that 20 years I did something wrong. That's too much for me to process. So what we recognize is that people are stuck in old chapters and they don't know how to convert those chapters into future readiness. So the story is stuck in a different place. That was the combination of the benchmark study with HBR and the over 400 transformations we have done, and we looked at employees' responses through focus groups, qualitative interviews, and so on and so forth. We realized the issue is that they're stuck in an old story and they don't know how to conclude that chapter and convert it to the next chapter.
It's funny you talk about that. I just did my research on changing in the church setting, and why our church is stuck and also don't want to change too. I had Cotter as the underlining model of would that work in a non public sector and private sector, you know. So it's kind of fascinating. You talk about the reasons why people don't want to change. I'm curious, as you did this research, did you also test for, and I did this in mine, is there a particular leadership style that's more easily adaptable to change versus another?
So I'm going to make generalization here, but really, ultimately, I saw two buckets of leaders. The leaders that came from operation and finance were very KPI oriented, very objective oriented. People became almost secondary to the numbers. They were running the business through process, and process was their way of controlling the situation. Then you got the more creative, call them, marketing, sales. They were far more people oriented. They would put people first before processes. And those were a little bit more adaptable to change. However, and let's take another industry in order to learn from. So in the book, I cite a study from the Mayo Clinic in which only 12% who ask for second opinion on a diagnosis actually receive the same diagnosis that they have originally received. Only 12%. Wow. 12%. This is ultimately bringing the confirmation bias. Even your physician is listening to you and is confirming it with other diagnoses that he or she have done in the past, as opposed to listening to you and understanding your feelings and your symptoms and everything else. So the more they are experienced, the less they are open to change. Because what they're doing is they're not learning from their success how to be open to the future. They're learning from their success to further reinforce old convictions. So although there was a little bit more openness around the creative side and the people-oriented side, when they've been in the business for too long, they become as rigid and as resistant as others.
Did you discover that people who were people-oriented, when the people resisted the change, were they more likely to stop because they were concerned about how people took the change versus those who weren't as people-oriented? So you like research? Let me give you one more. So I first came across it in a TED Talk. Professor Gilbert from Harvard conducted a very interesting study around are 18 years old people more open to change than 50 years old people? That was the premise of the study. And his conclusion was, no, they're not. Both are equally resistant. He described that as end of history illusion. We somehow, at any given time in our life, think that all the major changes that could have happened in our lives have already happened, and from now on, it's going to be smooth sailing. Okay? And he described that as ultimately an inherent human response
in which we treat change as a threat, and as a result of it, doesn't matter from which angle we are coming, it is being perceived as a threat. And that's the essence of Dare to Author, my book, that we are by default responding to change as victims. And the moment you're a victim, there's no way you're going to move forward.
I love that. We like actionable items. So what are some actionable steps you hope people take away from your book and can apply that to their organization?
So I remember an example. I was at the Aria Hotel in Las Vegas, behind the scenes, getting ready to go on stage. And the CEO, who was both German and a banker, said to me, Lior, remind me after the conference, I want to sign up for coaching how to do public speaking. I said, I'm not doing coaching for public speaking, but what's your issue? He said, no, you engage with the audience so well, and I don't know how to do that. I don't have this connection. And I said, oh, you want me to help you with that? He said, yeah. I said, let's do it right now. I said to him, why do you love this company? And he started to tell me that. It was a fascinating story. And I said to him, you know what? Put aside your slides. I want you to go out there in front of your employees, and I want you to tell them why you love this company. He said, why would they care? I said, just trust me. You want to be coached? Here it is, right now, free of charge. He goes there. You could hear a pin drop, and he came back almost in tears. And he said, "Why did it work?" I said, "Because you spoke from your heart. Because you were willing to share with them a human story and not just facts. Because people don't live in facts. People don't follow facts. People follow people. And you just spoke to them in the language that they understand." So in the book, I want a couple of things for people to take from it. First of all, you want to lead and you want exceptional results. Stories is the way to go there. And you need to learn how to author your stories in order to get to the exceptional performance and in order to get to your team following. Second thing, understand, and if you don't do that, you will become victim to prejudice and biases that are going to actually make your life miserable. And imposter syndrome is one example that I have a whole chapter on. I suffered from that also in the past. And you know what? Even when I achieved things, I always was full of anxiety that I will be discovered as a fraud, that it destroyed even my achievements until I learned how to overcome that, which I discuss in the book, how to do that. But here's one that I want everyone can start thinking about tomorrow. I had to coin this in order to have people understand that. So I don't know if it happened to you when you get feedback, okay? When you get feedback and people give you positive feedback, you're probably going to get very anxious and you're going to tell people, okay, what's the bottom line? What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong, right? We all do that. I coined this as the gratitude denial syndrome. And I'm arguing in the book that this behavior is exactly what's robbing us from the future strength that we need to face the future challenges. Because those positive comments, how dare you not believing people when they give you positive comments? How dare you not believing that you have it within you, instead of actually internalizing it, not in a cocky way, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that helps you refuel. So next time you need to catch up, next time you need to build yourself up, because we all have bad days. This is the refuel. This is the energy. So you want to start by authoring your life story. Pay attention to those compliments, pay attention to that positive feedback, and ask yourself, what is the good that I bring to the world? What is the unique perspective that I impact people that I can use for the future? Because again, if we don't author it, it will be authored for us, and we're just going to become the victims in our own story.
I love that. So I love to ask my guests this question. What do you want your legacy story to be?
What I want my legacy story to be?
Yeah.
You know, for years, when people told me that I inspire them, I did not take it in the right way, because I equated that to some kind of fake showmanship of, out-of-body experience that will not last. And I learned to accept over time that I live with people stories that stays with them for years. Okay, people quote me 10 years after they saw me. People remind me stories that they heard on stage that I shared, or example, and so on and so forth. So I want my legacy to be, he's the one who inspired me to stretch beyond what I thought I could. That's really what I want my legacy to be.
That's really wonderful. I love that. As we wrap up this amazing conversation, what key takeaways do you want the audience to take from our conversation?
I want them to know that to become the hero of your story and not the victim is a personal choice. Things can happen to you, but the way you're going to author that story is up to you. You can make the choice to live life as a victor and not as a victim in your own story. That's the first thing. Second, it's not a one-time choice, it's everyday choice. And third, whatever challenges you have in your life, understand that deep down, somewhere in your past, there is a chapter, unfinished chapter that you did not author that contains the answers to how you're gonna solve that new one. So whenever you feel that you're lost, whenever you feel that you don't know what to do, I want you to go back to the last time that you felt that way, the last time that you were overwhelmed and survived it, and ask yourself, how did I actually thrive it? I didn't just survive it. What was the thriving factor? And then learn that and bring it straight into the new challenge.
That's awesome. Where can listeners find your book, Dare to Author, and connect with you?
So people connect with me on liorarussy.com, just as my name, LIORARUSSY.com. There's a wealth of articles and videos, and all free of charge. Please, by all means, use it. Inspire yourself. The book is available on Amazon and other bookstores. So inspire yourself and give it to someone you love.
Well, thank you so much, Lior. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your stories and how you pour into your people and encourage them to be the author of their story, because that is so powerful, because your story is unique. Your story is powerful, and your story can inspire others. So thank you for sharing yours with us today.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share it.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Trailblazers and Titans. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the insights shared, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you the stories of the world's most inspiring leaders. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and exclusive content. Join our community of Trailblazers and Titans, and let's continue to learn, grow, and transform our visions into reality together. Until next time, keep blazing your trail and striving for greatness.